All right, what's up,
What
guys?
is up, everybody?
Welcome back.
Welcome to Professor F&E Teaches History.
Yes, sir. All right, so we've moved on from global studies,
Yes,
and
we're now on APUS History.
Indeed.
If you're new here, my name is Professor E. This is Professor F. If you're not, great to have you back.
All right.
And we're going to jump right in. What's the topic today?
So we're going to be going over the summer assignment, which hopefully everyone did. And considering the fact that we have a test on it in about 2 days, we decided it was necessary just to go over the terms to help you guys get a pretty basic understanding of it all.
We want you guys to start off the year strong.
So we're going to start this. Here, do we want to erase this now?
We can flip it back.
Yeah, flip it back. So going 2 million years ago, we start off with the Great Ice Age.
Ice Age.
So the Great Ice Age was just a period of coldness all over the world.
Extreme cold.
There was around 2-mile thick glaciers or ice sheets that covered places in Asia, Europe, spanning all the way to the Americas.
Yeah.
So
how ice ages kind of work, and it's not just this ice age. Like, again, global warming is kind of a weird term. It's actually climate change. What happens is that there's a bunch of dips of hot and cold. Right now we're in a pretty hot area. But how it works is that usually the cold is just in the north and the south. But what happens during these ice ages is that the cold goes throughout the world, so these glaciers are able to, really circumnavigate the world.
Yeah, so when these glaciers were formed, the Bering Land Bridge was formed.
So the Bering Land Bridge is, how on the map you have, like, pretend this is a map, right? This is Alaska, and this is the end of Russia. Again, on the map, they're complete opposites. But when you actually look at a globe, they're right next to each other. I think it's just like 2 miles or something like that. So during this ice age, that water freezed, so people were able to walk across it.
So this brought a lot of migrants in from other places in Europe and places like that into the Americas.
These were the earliest humans.
The earliest of earliest, Vikings and Native Americans.
So really?
Maybe. I don't know. I just made that up.
I don't think that's true.
So over time, we skip a little bit to now these civilizations that were built.
Yes.
So there were a lot of Native Americans, a lot of Native American tribes spanning all over the Americas. But there were around 3 main big ones, 2 of which were in like the southern parts of America, and 1 of which was in the northern part. So the first one was the Aztecs. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of the Aztecs. The Aztecs were in Mexico. They were this very developed society for the time. Of course, nothing like today where we are in a house recording on an iPhone with a TV.
Yeah. But not when we say modern, these were very modern places. When we say modern, again, it's not like we're in houses and stuff. But compared to the other things that were going on at the time, it was a very advanced place to live in.
Yeah, so they had complex roads and bridges, and they had a very large population for the time. So the Aztecs were a pretty impressive group of people. And then we also had the Incas, who were in South America, who had a similar story where they were pretty advanced for the time. They were known for their complex bridges and road systems, which helped them with trading. And these places were definitely ahead of their time. And it's all thanks to the key part of the world, I guess, which was agriculture.
Agriculture. Yes, that's a big thing. That's how the world runs. Food.
So
you need food to survive.
We now run on industry, but this is obviously pre-industrial revolution.
Yes.
So the world ran on agriculture. In specific, corn, otherwise known as maize. You might see it as maize or corn. They're synonyms.
Same thing.
So corn was the number one plant.
It was really rich in nutrients, and it was really easy to grow. You were able to grow in a lot of different conditions. You didn't really need to pay attention to much of it, and it helped people not starve. You didn't need that much of it to survive.
So this made it very popular worldwide, starting in like Mexico and moving northward is how corn spread.
Yep.
So eventually people kind of got sick of this very no variety in their diet.
Again, people were starving. Corn, it has a lot of things, but it doesn't have everything you need. And, people were just getting smarter. People were evolving.
So that's when 3-sister farming gets introduced, which was the big 3.
The big 3.
Beans. Corn. Squash. So these 3 were not coincidental. These 3,
They worked off each other.
Yeah, these three crops, they benefited off one another.
Yeah.
So when corn was planted,
Yes.
the nutrients helped beans grow.
Yes.
And
not only were all three of the crops very good for your diet, they were very balanced in your diet, but they kind of traded nutrients with each other. What was it? It was like the three farm method or something like that. It's kind of that same process, except that was invented in Europe, which is a whole Atlantic Ocean away. Exactly. But how it worked is that the nutrients that the corn released went into the beans, nutrients that the bean released went into the squash. Again, that's not actually accurate, but that's kind of the idea gist of it. Yeah.
So this boosted diets and it boosted population at the time, which brings us to that third group I was telling you about. This one more in North America, which was called the Iroquois Confederacy. See, in North America, most of the tribes were pretty scattered. They weren't very, centralized or condensed, except the Iroquois Confederacy. Unified, perfect. The Iroquois Confederacy was unified. They had a strong political system. They had a strong military. They were one of the outliers in this time period.
But again, when we say strong, we don't mean like
Europe.
We don't even mean like ancient Greece. We mean like, oh, this guy has a cool bow and arrow.
Exactly. So now that's like the first sort of migration was the Native Americans.
Yes.
And now we move on to the second migration,
which was Europe.
Mainly Spain at this point in time. Mm-hmm. So as everyone knows, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So as that happened, he landed on the Caribbean. What was it? Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico and Haiti.
And what did he call it? What was it?
Hispaniola.
Hispaniola is what they called it at the time. So when Columbus and his people arrived, they started to interact with the natives, and they began what was called the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange was an exchange of goods between the Old World and the New World. The New World provided things like crops, gold, silver, and labor. Very big on that one. While the Old World gave them some crops, cattle, and other animals, which were very significant, and disease.
And before you're talking about that, this was an exchange of ideas more than actual goods. They're like, oh, that's cool that you know how to do that. We know how to do this. And they kind of shared ideas with each other, but you're going to say it was very one-sided.
Yeah, so disease. That is obviously not a good thing to spread. And the reason this happened is because the Old World, they were able to build immunity to many diseases started by animals. Meanwhile, the New World, who had not been introduced to many of these animals, like certain cattle and like pigs, they did not have immunity to these diseases. So when they first interacted with them, their immune systems were very weak and it was pretty damaging.
Yes.
So people say that the Spanish killed a lot of Native Americans, but
disease killed as much, if not even more, Native Americans.
So as we were talking about earlier, the Aztecs and the Incas, when Spain came, they didn't last very long.
No.
The Spanish conquistadors came right in and they toppled the Aztecs and the Incas. And what's so crazy about that is, as we said, they were the strongest places of their time, but still, the Spanish just destroyed them with ease, to be honest.
Yeah.
They got rid of everything that they had built, all the history that they had, and it just sort of shows some of the mistreatment that's already starting. So then this doesn't really connect, but it's a random term that we thought was relevant. What is it? Potosi?
Yeah.
Potosi was the silver mines in Bolivia. So Spain, who had just now found all this silver, was very happy with it.
Very happy.
So they sold lots of it, as much as they can, but
it did cause inflation in the mother country, which isn't probably something that you get tested on, but that is just a
good thing to know.
Fact. Yeah.
So continuing the story, Spain traveled to the New World not only for resources and people, and it was kind of accidental, but once they were there...
Oh, yes. Yeah, we should say that. Columbus, he thought he was going to Asia. And even when he landed in America, he still thought he was in Asia. His goal, because the Muslims controlled the trade routes going straight from Europe to India. But Columbus was like, no, I'm going to go the other way. So he landed in America, whatever. And he was like, oh, Indians. And that's why some Native Americans are still labeled Indians today.
So once they got there, Spain had a plan to spread their religion. So as you know, the Protestant Reformation was happening in Europe at the time. So Spain was they felt that Catholicism was being threatened.
Ooh, religion,
So
that's another big one. Yeah.
yeah, it was a good idea for them to try and spread Catholicism to these Native Americans, which is introducing the Jesuits, who were a group of Catholics who tried to convert Native Americans to Catholicism, but the natives who had their own culture and their own religions resisted this sort of conversion attempt. So over time, the Spanish mistreated the natives severely.
Yeah, because they were so. There's a very interesting power dynamic, even though that they both like kind of evolved separately. That the people in Europe were much more advanced than the people in America. When Columbus arrived, in his letter he sent to the Queen, he was like, "Oh, these people are really unmodern. I kind of
they would make fine servants.
Yes, they would make fine servants. They're kind of willing to like give you guys stuff, to give us stuff. So it'd be really easy if we could take them over and make them our slaves."
So I'm gonna go out of order a little bit.
No, of course.
So as you guys should know, the encomienda system.
Yes.
We saw the triangle that Tim put up in class. We don't need to draw it, right?
No, we don't.
So there was a hierarchy which had the Spanish people at the top and the Native Americans at the bottom. The Native Americans were supposed to start off in the Columbian Exchange. They agreed to do some labor, pretty fair. But over time, the Spanish people took advantage of the Native Americans and enslaved them, forced them to do hard labor all day.
It was so easy to.
They didn't fight back. Some Native Americans
They tried.
poisoned themselves and poisoned their kids to escape a life of enslavement. So this brings me to some of the rebellions. So first we have someone by the name of Bartolomé de las Casas. So he wrote a lot about how the encomienda system is awful, it's inhumane. He critiqued it severely.
Yeah.
So
a very modern standpoint on not so much.
Yeah, definitely a very modern standpoint.
Yes.
So, I mean, the Spanish listened to this, but not in the way we'd all want, but we're going to get to that in one sec, because we have to go back now to the Pueblo Revolt. Because
Pueblo Revolt.
They were enslaved. The people, they were not happy. They wanted their land back. They wanted their lives back. So that's when the Pueblo Revolt occurred, where they actually successfully drove the Spanish out of New Mexico for around 50 years before eventually being reconquered. But that was a big success for the Native Americans.
And it's kind of an example of everything else in the region, how the natives didn't really want the people to be.
Of course. So now going back to that, Bartolomé de las Casas, his critiques eventually led to African slavery, but we'll get to that in a sec.
Yep.
So all these bad things that you hear us talking about, it got spread over through the grapevine. It ended up in the ears of the people of the British and the France, which is where the Black Legend started.
Yes, the Black Legend. Now, the Black Legend, as it's told, is that Spain was uniquely bad to the Native Americans. They didn't care about their culture. They didn't care about their religion. They didn't care about them, about anything. The only thing they cared about was themselves and how to benefit themselves at the expense of the natives. Now, the people who
you're good. You're good.
I know I might have been.
It's all right. It's all right.
The people who said who made the Black Legend was the English and the Dutch, who happened to be not only colonial rivals with Spain. They are the bigger thing is they are religious rivals. Now, Spain and the Netherlands are Protestant, and the English and the Dutch and the Netherlands, which is the Dutch, are Protestant, and Spain is very Catholic. Spain wanted to spread Catholicism. England wanted to spread Protestantism, and that is why England was kind of spreading this propaganda. Now, we're not saying that atrocities did happen; they definitely did, but it wasn't as bad. It wasn't uniquely bad like the English said.
Yeah, they exaggerated a little bit, and that was also so they could justify their own colonization. They could say we have to save them from the Spanish.
Yes,
but in reality, they just did the same things, which moves us to the next migration, which was. Actually, no, let's take a step back.
England.
Yeah, we have to talk about what drove England to the United States. So we talked a little bit about the religious rivalry, but beyond that, the English, they saw what was happening. They saw Spain getting rich off this exploitation of resources and slaves, and they wanted that. They wanted the profits that Spain was getting, and they also wanted to spread Protestantism, just as the Spanish wanted to spread Catholicism. So that's what led to a big fight between Britain and Spain, where the Spanish Armada was defeated. So this might not sound like a big deal. The war itself was not a big deal, but it was the symbol that mattered. The Spanish Armada was impenetrable. They were undefeatable. until Britain defeated them. And that marked a change in power. Now Britain controlled the seas. There was no one that they had to be afraid of. Meanwhile, in the past, the Spanish and the Portuguese sort of ran the seas.
Yeah.
So
that was a rhyme.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's actually true. So now it made colonization easier, but now we needed someone to sort of popularize it.
Yes.
Which is where, do you remember who I'm talking about? Richard Huck.
Oh my God, what did Tim say?
Richard.
Hucklet.
Yeah, he's like Richard Hucklet. So we did a homework on him, so you guys should know about him. But he just spread.
Sorry.
He just spread. He just popularized colonization.
Yeah, he realized that that America was so great in terms of resources and labor and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And he went to the Queen. He talked about it. What we talked about is that he phrased it a little differently. We don't really need to know much about that because it breaks off from kind of the main point we're trying to make here. But just know that he was someone who realized that the Americas were really, really,
and
really
popularized
good.
it.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the first English colony, otherwise known as Jamestown, which was in Virginia. What time are we?
16.
All right, so it's fine.
I wish it could stay like this.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna.
I'm sorry,
fine.
people.
We'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, next video.
So the first colony in Virginia, which was Jamestown.
Yep.
Where a Virginia company, otherwise known as a joint stock company, they decided to pay for this charter and establish Jamestown.
And there were a bunch of joint stock companies. We forgot to talk about this. Joint stock companies were, and this is when capitalism was getting kind of big in Europe. Joint stock companies were really, it's really just kind of the beginning of investments. How people could invest a certain money in an expedition. The expedition comes back with a crap ton of gold, and then they get some of that gold. They get some of the profit. They make profit. The people make profit, and really, that joint stock companies are the only way that this could happen. That's the only way you could really get capital to do these kind of stuff.
So I know we made it seem like the New World was all great. England was going to come and immediately prosper, but that was not the case. They had to face a harsh reality, which was famine, which was diseases, which was weather, and conflict with Native Americans, otherwise known as, or in specific, the Powhatans.
Yep.
Right? So where was I? So there was many wars between the Native Americans and the English settlers, known as the Anglo-Powhatan Wars, which were
Anglo-British Powhatan.
Yeah. So by what's this year? 1685, the Powhatans were essentially extinct, which showed that the British very, very easily dominated
so much
them.
superior than the natives.
So that's when now the actual development was able to start, where we introduced the man himself, John Rolfe. You could talk about that.
Because I don't remember. Oh, tobacco.
Tobacco,
yes.
Yeah.
So again, the reason they wanted, Europe wanted to go to America was for
economic. Sorry.
Gang. It's okay. Now, so Europe wanted to benefit from this. Again, they wanted to, create a permanent settlement there, but their main goal was to benefit the mother country, which was England in Jamestown's case. So a big way to do that was a cash crop. A cash crop is one crop that a whole entire area specifies on. This could be like a little town. This could be a whole entire state or a really big settlement. And in John Rolfe's example, he perfected tobacco cultivation. Tobacco was a cash crop, and when you have a cash crop, that creates a plantation system, which was a really large-scale farm in which they used labor, and actually a lot of labor, and that is why you started seeing slavery, indentured servants, all that.
Yeah, so this helped Jamestown significantly because, as I said, they got off to a bit of a rocky start, but now they sort of found their niche. They were able to use tobacco to bring them a lot of economic success because it was a very addicting chemical and substance that everyone wanted to get their hands on.
And like I was saying before, you need all that cheap labor. So that is when the English decided to go to Africa, pick up a bunch of kids, and bring them to America and have them as slaves. I don't know why I said it like that. Forgive me.
So as I said, as we talked about, Ebbs talked about the, what are they called?
Professor E to you.
Professor E, I'm sorry. Professor E talked about, what's the word? Plantations. Professor E talked about plantations. Plantations were hard to run. They needed people. But obviously, the people of Jamestown, the English people, they didn't want to pay for these workers. So they turned to Africa, where they feel that they could take advantage of another weak minority group and sort of enslave them for their own personal gain.
Yes, and that is the Africans. Now, so the West Indies, they are not in the motherland of America. They are in the Caribbean, but they were the people who first perfected the slave system due to the Barbados Slave Code. Write that down. I don't even think that's in here. Oh yeah, it is. Barbados Slave Code denies slaves' rights, and the model spreads to the rest of the colonies. So Barbados, they perfected the system so well that the people in homeland America were like, oh my god, we should use that. That's kind of really how the evolution of America during the second migration happened, is that one place does it right and then everyone starts to do it. Just like Jamestown was like, okay, the British, like Jamestown, they really know what they're doing, so they modeled after Jamestown, they modeled after the Barbados Slave Code, they modeled after cash crops. Really, that's how everything became uniform, because it worked.
Trial and error, yeah.
Trial and error, yes.
So as we are here, we get to a little pause on colonization because of a English Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that kind of took England's focus away from the colonies. But again, that wasn't for a very long time. But even though England wasn't really present during that time, that doesn't mean that people weren't present in the Americas, and that is kind of how America was able to develop their own distinct culture.
So as Matthew talked about, they modeled one place after another, which is how we get the creation of which is how we get the creation of the House of, what is it,
Burgesses,
which was the
first representative government in America. And again, England was fighting their own war in a different area, so the people in America were like, okay, yeah, we could really do some stuff, we could really make our own thing.
And the thing is, when you're so far away, England and the New World, they were a whole ocean apart from each other.
Yep.
So the Americans sort of had to rule themselves, which is where this representative government, which is sort of a hint at our future democracy, comes into play. So
that was tough. Again,
what Professor E said about modeling after one another, new colonies started to arise, such as Maryland. Maryland, Georgia, the Carolinas?
Yeah, and Pennsylvania is different because Pennsylvania formed a different way. But basically, these countries, these states that you're going to see, all kind of adopted that same plantation cash crop policy in order to benefit the mother country.
Yeah, so they all had plantations. They all had slaves, which is very big. And most of these countries
Maryland, not so much. More Georgia and the Carolinas, they were more southern. They did more plantation stuff. Maryland, again, it was very present, but it didn't adopt as much of cash crop. When you think of Maryland, that's what you think of New England.
So the cash crops and the slaves and the plantations existed very heavily in the South. Just keep that in mind, because that's going to help you way in the future.
This is not South America. This is the South part of North America.
So now we go on to... We could talk about toleration, right? I feel like that's a very important theme, is toleration. So places in the North happen to be a little bit more tolerant of religions, of genders, of races, as we sort of touched on. Meanwhile, the South was less tolerant.
That is true. Now, we're going to go to... Yo, do you not have Pennsylvania on here?
I don't think it's happened yet.
Pennsylvania. Oh, Pennsylvania hasn't happened yet. That is true.
Okay.
We will definitely get to that later on how, because these. Yeah. No. Yeah, totally.
So just something that's good to know.
Yeah, we're kind of going ahead here.
A man named Lord Baltimore created Baltimore, and Baltimore is a city in Maryland, so he was like also the founder of Maryland.
Yes.
That's just good to know. And then a cash crop that was very popular that we also feel is important to mention was sugar. Sugar. People were moving beyond tobacco.
Sugar was in the Caribbean.
To things like things like cotton, and other cash crops that became very popular. So let me see. So now we're going to wrap this up a little bit with just a little bit of talk on everything we mentioned today. So yeah.
And today, again, this is just the first part of a bunch of other parts.
These are chapters 1 and 2.
These are chapters 1 and 2. Did we just finish chapter 1?
No, we finished 1 and 2.
We finished 1 and 2.
Yeah, this is the end of the video.
Nice. Okay, this is the end of the video.
If you want to wrap it up.
We're definitely going to get 2 more to you today, hopefully. Wrap it up. You can watch the video back if you want.
I don't know, just final summaries.
Native America is shaped by geography and corn. Spain came. They got a bunch of silver. They were on a Catholic mission, conquest, and cruelty, as in the Black Legend, even though it wasn't as extreme in real life. That still definitely did happen to an extent. England came. They were Protestant. Because they defeated the Spanish Armada, they were able to come in. They created Jamestown, which was the first permanent settlement, and the southern colonies became plantation economies because that was the best way that could benefit the mother country.
So
Thank you,
it for
everybody.
This video. Professor Stephanie signing off.
See y'all later.